When Aunt Klara got sick and eventually died, I had to take care of everything she left behind. She left a small house full of old furniture, plastic flowers, crooked paintings, discount store plates, clothes from 3 different decades. Drawers packed with things nobody could even identify anymore. Cleaning it all up took weeks. At first, it irritated me. But then, while going through her closet, I found one of her old scraps carefully folded between sweaters. On the front, she had embroidered a large red rose, completely against hospital policy. I left immediately, because it was such a Klara thing to do. Klara had been a nurse for more than 30 years. Surgical wards, oncology, ICU and ICU step-down, cardiology. Places filled with people whose bodies were breaking apart, and places where nurses often quietly broke apart beside them. I knew Klara fairly well, but over time she had hardened. She complained constantly about management, about patients' families, about the patients themselves, about doctors, about her aching feet, about her aching back. She seemed blunt, even harsh, mostly irritated. But there was one unusual thing about her. She had a hobby, and honestly, very few people truly do. She loved embroidery. It calmed her down. She embroidered obsessively. The angrier she became, the more she stitched. Bright, impossible things. Once I asked her why. She shrugged. Otherwise, I would probably strangle somebody. Then she laughed, but not entirely. In 2008, after layoffs and budget cuts, Klara lost her hospital job and eventually had to take a position in a nursing home. That place exhausted her almost immediately. The hallways smelled like urine and bleach. Bed alarms never stopped ringing. Residents tried climbing out of beds or wheelchairs. Some even tried to escape. She had to work both day and night shifts. Half of the staff moved around like sleepwalkers. Klara still carried her hospital instincts inside her. Falls mattered. Changing condition mattered. Breathing mattered. The other nurses laughed at her for running through the halls. They don't pay you for marathons, they said. But Klara couldn't stop. At night her shoes clicked rapidly along the corridor. She checked room after room, again and again. One patient especially caught her attention. Rose. An elderly woman who had just returned from the hospital again. Pneumonia, kidney failure, fluid overload, heart problems. Multiple body systems slowly falling apart, and honestly, the hydration had worsened things instead of helping. Her skin looked pale and stretched tight from retained fluid. Klara, somewhat cruelly, thought Rose looked like a pufferfish. But Rose remained strangely calm and composed, in her melancholy old Eastern European way. What worried Klara most was that nobody ever visited her. Eventually Rose explained why. Years earlier, she had pushed her son too hard. She wanted him to become someone serious, a doctor, a lawyer, anything stable. Instead, he rebelled, got married, took his Japanese wife, and moved them to Hawaii. There he worked as a tour guide and grew a garden. Rose chuckled softly. Well, at least since the weather is good, he won't starve. Between spoonfuls of puree food, Rose added. After many years, his wife became some kind of a medical specialist. I never really understood what kind. And they never divorced. Actually, he became successful. Then she looked down, and I thought I was protecting him. She smiled weakly. Times were different, she added, and then she whispered, I didn't know any better back then. Klara didn't know what to say to any of that. She never had children herself. Rose said she eventually realized she accepted her son no matter what he became. Doctor, waiter, gardener, storyteller. But by then the damage had already been done. He became distrustful, Rose said. He didn't believe I had changed. He didn't believe I loved him. Rose's honesty unsettled Klara. Love had disappeared from Klara's own life long ago. Over time, it had been replaced by criticism and sarcasm, protective armor, distractions, ways to avoid asking herself certain questions. Around that time, Klara called the physician. Why can't we put her on hospice? She asked. She's already dying. We're just dragging her back and forth. These transports are going to finish her off. The doctor delayed the decision. One more hospitalization, he said. Then we'll talk. After hanging up, a younger nurse asked why doctors always waited so long. Klara answered immediately. Because the government pays and everybody profits. That night, she called Rose's son herself. For the first time in years, she deliberately softened her voice. Not artificially, not professionally, humanly. She told him about the puree food, about the way Rose talked about Hawaii, about how proud she truly was of him. Unexpectedly, the son began sobbing on the phone. Klara froze. People cried around her constantly. Families, patients, co-workers. But something about the sound of a grown man crying for his mother pierced through her defenses differently. Klara herself almost never cried anymore. Not after years in hospitals. Crying slowed you down. Crying made shifts harder. Crying could open doors Klara was not ready to walk through. So instead she became efficient, harsh, tired, functional. A week later, Rose returned from the hospital in even worse condition. This time the doctor finally agreed to hospice care. Soon afterward her son arrived. David stayed for 2 weeks. Almost immediately, they became comfortable with each other again, as if they had never been separated, as if there were no lost years between them. They simply sat together or listened to music. Rose drifted in and out of sleep. David adjusted her blanket. Rose drank thickened liquids. David drank tea. There was no need for forgiveness. There wasn't even guilt between them anymore. Klara watched it all from behind the medication carts. To her own irritation, she felt something again. What a soft idiot I've become, she muttered to herself. One night, at 2:56 in the morning, Klara sat alone at the dim nurse's station, trying to finish charting without falling asleep. The hallway was quiet, except for the distant hum of oxygen concentrators and televisions leaking static from some of the rooms. Suddenly, the phone rang. Klara answered automatically. At first there was only static, then a faint, distant voice. Klara, more static. I see you. Klara stood up instantly. Klara, I am here. A shock ran through Klara's body. Rose, she whispered. Then louder. Rose! By the time she reached room 37, she already knew. Rose had died moments earlier. Klara checked for a pulse anyway. Nothing. In the dim light, Rose's skin was already changing color. Klara straightened the blanket and gently arranged her hand. Then she looked at the clock. 2:58. Later, when David asked what time his mom died, Klara answered without hesitation. 2:56. The exact time of the phone call. A year later, Klara returned to hospital work. It was 2009. Lower pay, more patients, different staffing ratios, more chaos. But she herself had changed a little. Not softer, just less armored. The hospital issued standard turquoise scrubs with a strict dress code policy. No decorations. No cheerful cartoon dogs with stethoscopes. No kittens or flowers. A month later, Klara came to work wearing a hand-embroidered red rose on her scrub top. Management gave her disapproving looks, but patients loved it. The rose calmed them somehow. The director of nursing said something about it once. Klara ignored her. Soon, the nurses started calling her Klara Rose. She pretended to hate the nickname. But during difficult shifts, she would sometimes touch the embroidered flower unconsciously. After resuscitations, after deaths, after conversations with terrified families, as if she was drawing strength from the memory of Rose. Rose had forced Klara to feel something again. And once those feelings returned, Klara could no longer completely hide inside bitterness. And strangely enough, the rose, whether the embroidered one or the woman herself, never became a symbol of death to her. It became proof that somewhere beneath exhaustion, sarcasm, procedures, burnout, and the fluorescent lights of the hospital corridors, the human soul, that inner light, can still survive, even in her.